This episode is brought to you by our wonderful sponsors at Griffin Air Conditioning. Griffin Air Conditioning offers the highest quality of air conditioning sales and service across the Sydney metropolitan area, providing installation and maintenance to commercial, domestic and industrial customers. Working with this team, you'll be guaranteed the latest services, technology and developments in the industry, as well as dealing with some legendary blokes. Visit griffinair.com.au and tell them we sent you for a cool deal. That's griffinair.com.au. The great ones, they're different. They really are. Not better, just different. Sure, there's a physical power, a mental strength, a complex but resolute constitution too. There's a whole lot more than just the measurables. That's something else, that intangible. It separates us from them. Welcome to the Legends series on Andy Raymond Unfiltered. This guy, he went about his business pretty quietly, but we could be pretty confident he'd produce the business again. See, that's what he did. A consistency and level of performance that was the envy of his peers and supporters. A wonderful example of all things good about rugby league. But who is Jason Nightingale?
Yes, so odd, different question, odd, different person. I'm a gypsy. I think I adapted to that nickname. Sort of product of came from and how I was raised, and I suppose applied that to most areas of my life. I suppose big thing, the who are you question, especially when asked to athletes, it's important to think of it without your jersey. And I have a pleasure of setting up a business school and education school with my business partner, and one of those core lessons we try and do is who are you, what are your values? So that very much who are you is part of your values outside of the jersey. And for myself, I guide myself by the values of growth, balance, connectedness, and love. Love ties all that together. So I sort of feel like if I'm guided by those things in my life, I can make the right decisions and figure out who I am outside of that. Essentially on the surface, I'm very gypsy-like and adaptable and friendly, I suppose, and competitive and all those things as well. So I think that's important to know what your core values are and how to use them to make decisions in your life.
You've always appeared to me as a very grounded guy. As you said, you're aware of your core values. How much have your core values changed over the journey?
I suppose little things change all the time with sort of life events and transition of careers and having children and getting married and those sort of things. So probably just the way your perspective on life, I think changes a lot. I think you gain a better understanding of your skills that you have and how they transition, how they work in the real world, especially, and what don't work, and then how do you manage your weaknesses and try and which ones do you work on and which ones do you just accept. So they change with life. When you get older, you get more mature. You have kids and sort of think a bit differently about the world. I suppose all those sort of things go into making you the person you are and sort of what you're trying to be as well.
As a footballer, I always judged you as a complete professional. That's how I see you and have seen you over the journey. But more importantly than what I think, that's how you were judged by your teammates and your rivals. That's a really nice rap, I'd imagine, a nice way to be remembered as a footballer.
Yeah, it is really nice. I think that certainly I wasn't born with that. That was very much a learned thing when it came to my football career. And the professionalism was something I learned from others. I think there's a big thing for myself is mentors and leaders and those that are around you and those that really help you on your way. Are what I had a really good professional bunch of people when I was coming through, and Dean Young and Benny Cray and Mark Gasnier and these guys that really attacked the footy field attack the training paddock, and I certainly didn't. I also had Brett Morris, who was the same age as me and had a more professional approach. So I suppose learning from those guys and figuring out it's the only way to be, and I definitely didn't have that at 17, 18 and 19. So yeah, definitely a developed skill of professionalism and more not strict professionalism as in my approach, but more energy. The way that approach the sessions were making sure that at least throwing everything at it.
A career that started in 2007, went through to 2018. It was also a period where the way a winger played the game changed dramatically, but also the physical attributes a winger possessed changed dramatically, didn't they?
Yeah, I think they opened up so quarter post and those sort of things, but also the game sped up a lot, and the onus on the back of the field, effectiveness, whether that be breaking tackles, making meters, or finding quick play the balls, all those sort of things added to the mix and created extra responsibility of the no longer was it just the on the end of the line. So I think that sort of started to happen in early 2000s and continued through the start of my career.
You're 183 centimetres, a playing weight, depending on lunch, of about 91 kilos. So you're not a small fella, but comparatively late in your career, you'd end up getting dwarfed by opponents. Was size the biggest change you saw across your journey?
No, I don't think so. It's sort of, there were still big wingers and the small wingers as well today, and it did change a little bit with probably just the generation of guys that we had. It's not so much these days. There's a few really huge wingers, but there's still a lot of smaller sort of wingers. So I think it was more defensive structures and the way you attack, the way you diffuse kicks, and some things that changed through that point. Definitely your approach to the back of the field had to a lot of change. You look at Penrith at the moment, their back five really lead the way in how they set up their sets. So I think that transition of just finishing tries to perhaps having a bigger workload back of the field, and then also stopping tries, whether that be diffusing kicks or jumping on the end of a line to stop a try. You see that happen so often, where wingers actually end up saving tries. So I think those transitions probably more so than physical attributes.
Let's wind the clock back, mate. Tell us about the early years playing footy or your first memories of the game.
I was sort of dragged down the park and Renown United when I was about 7 years old. And I just remember loving tackling at that point. Just loved just running, chasing people down and tackling, and such a great experience. Just going to training and that when you midweek, you just what are you doing? And you kid with lots of energy and take you down the park and then just run around. I remember pride myself on topping a tackle count. That sort of thing where how many tackles did I make? It's like a scoreboard for success when they're not counting if you won or lost. So. Those sort of things. I remember those memories. A lot of mates that I played a couple of years, 3 or 4 years from now, and then a bit of grassroots rugby in New Zealand. Then came back and sort of started a bit more of a serious journey after that.
It was a famous junior club, as you said, Renown United. Were you the standout kid as a junior, or that wasn't you?
No, that wasn't me. I think I had sort of made most of the junior rep teams, but not stand out. I think I got a couple of best and fairnesses, but not in my teenage years. So I wasn't winning like individual trophies in my teenage years, which is sort of when it starts to people are starting to watch. And that definitely was a sort of slowish ride through. I didn't really grow. I was sort of about 16, 17 when I grew again. So that sort of changes things a bit, and ended up I was in 18s, under 18s, which was the first year going to 20s, and I had a few of my teammates that played SG ball with, so under 18s with, who were already up playing in the 20s, and I had to train a trial for the 20s to make the Jersey Flag team. That was sort of slow, and I had a really good renowned United season. That year we won the under-18s comp, but still I wasn't contracted and had to fight my way into the extended squad essentially at the start.
This episode is brought to you by our wonderful sponsors at Griffin Air Conditioning. Griffin Air Conditioning offers the highest quality of air conditioning sales and service across the Sydney metropolitan area, providing installation and maintenance to commercial, domestic and industrial customers. Working with this team, you'll be guaranteed the latest services, technology and developments in the industry, as well as dealing with some legendary blokes. Visit griffinair.com.au and tell them we sent you for a cool deal. That's griffinair.com.au. Round 8, 2007, Dragons, Panthers, Jubilee Oval. It was debut day. What do you recall of it?
Yeah, it was funny. I was laughing about it. We had the Legends walk with Benny Creagh and Benny Hornby being on in that. And on that day, Benny Hornby passed me my first ever pass, and I dropped it cold. And Benny Creagh came up to me first thing. He said, "Don't worry, I dropped the first ball over. I got passed while I was on the wing playing, I think, during the game," and it sort of set my mind at ease. So, Benny Hornby, a perfect pass, straight to the thing. I'd already run and made a break, but then forgot the ball, and so that was my first ever touch in first grade, and it was crazy to have that sort of. But I think that having that sort of like Benny Creagh come and say that straight away is, don't worry about it because it happens, and then second touch, I think I dropped it again. And then third touch, Matty Cooper put me away down the sideline for a try, and I'd forgotten everything beforehand. So, was off celebrating like we'd won the game.
You look comfortable immediately from debut. Not even 12 months later, you'd play the first of 33 tests for New Zealand. What a test to debut in as well, the centenary test at the SCG. Does that still rank as a career highlight all these years later, the first time you wore your country's colours?
Yeah, definitely. My family were all living in New Zealand, and got them to come across to Sydney. When I think the combination of that, I think we talk about, sort of debuting at Cogra in front of a lot of friends and family as well, had come across for that. But having that sort of, debut in sort of hometown for my country in New Zealand was pretty special. So I had a few relatives come across, and to be able to do that in the centenary test, and you played a game where the SCG is full. It's got a very different feel to it than every rugby league field, really, because it's a cricket ground. But also the history that you do absorb is special when it's full. And there was a lot of big build up to that. I suppose you get taught. I think the best thing about that when it's an historic occasion, it forces us and rightly so to learn a bit about history and the history of rugby league and where it came across, and those things really help put in perspective why we are so lucky to play the game we play, I think that was another great occasion for that for myself.
You mentioned history and learning because as young blokes, most of us are more interested in girls. We're more interested in beer and being young men. But there's also a time where we start maturing and we start learning about who we are, where we've come from. How much did you learn about New Zealand, the history and the heritage of New Zealand, just by being in camp that week with experienced guys?
A lot. I think we had Sonny Bill in there, and Benji was, even though he's only still playing and not that much older than me, but he'd been playing for a long time by then. So Roy Asatasi and those sort of guys. So you do learn a lot. I learned a lot of I only went to school in New Zealand for 2 years, so I learned a lot of my Māori culture and New Zealand culture from cousins and that. So you taught, but I suppose how that applied to sport was different. And that culture is strong, and I think that the cool melting pot of the New Zealand Rugby League team is Polynesian, white. Even Sean Johnson obviously played there for a long time. He's got Asian culture. Is all those, and how it meshes and how it comes together. I really think New Zealand does a great job of merging all those things and into sport. So we respecting the Samoan, Tongan, Fijian, Māori, white, whatever it is, the background. So I think learning a lot about how that worked in sport was really interesting, and I loved that occasion, those experiences, and every time I was lucky enough to get in camp with the Kiwis.
An amazing time in New Zealand Rugby League, mate. The 2008 World Cup, the win there, an amazing tournament, an amazing final, but most importantly, an amazing time of growth at the elite level in New Zealand.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. I think we had a really good changeover of sporting guard and that over there, and they upped their professionalism over in New Zealand Rugby League. And I think Jim Doyle took over, and Steve Kearney was coaching, and Wayne was helping him as well, and he built a really good crew. Had Knowles and those strength and conditioners around that. But I think that was the first time I really got a picture of how sport and business of sport work together. So Jim Doyle came across and he presented the map and the plans of development, how they're going to improve the grassroots development, how they're going to improve the commercial, and how they were going to improve the on-field performance and essentially what was in it for us. So that was cool to see that, how the vision and picture, culture, and everything we learned in sport, he really related it to business then. And I think that really helped with the buy-in, and we had a really golden period of growth. And it was driven by smart heads, business, good people, good coaches, and good mentors.
As you mentioned, Steve was the coach, Wayne was the assistant. You'd go on to be coached at club level by Wayne just a couple of years later. What were your first impressions of old Clint Eastwood during that camp? It was he's very warm and can't say hello. Obviously, I think he'd already signed with us by that year. And he sat me down and had a chat and asked me about the Dragons. And I still remember that conversation when he asked me about whether he'd chosen to keep the right twin. And I said, the right twin was both of them. So it's almost like you can't win and can't lose. So you can keep one and they'll be good, or you can lose. But ideally, you win. Win-win is keeping both. So I still remember that, and then going, mate, some of the things and the questions he asked, the direction he was given, the way he expected us to compete at training, that was a really big eye-opener. I think I was still sort of half trying, half not in 2008, and I think it was a really good, cool, lucky to get that insight. I think it was myself and Nathan Finn, I think he joined us that year, had that insight into what Wayne would be like to coach and really allow you to prepare for that, but also keep you accountable to the effort that you put into your game. So you're playing first grade, you've just won a World Cup, on top of the world, no doubt. Then 2009 comes, Brett Morris and Wendell Saylor at the club, and at times you're back at the Shell Harbour Dragons, the feeder club, at different periods. Yeah,
I actually only played one game for Shell Harbour, but I had a few injuries that year and that out. I played Shell Harbour my one game for Shell Harbour was in New Zealand, actually, in Auckland. That was cool. It was, I broke my hand and had a couple of little niggles. I think I started ahead of Brett, and then he just shot out of a cannon, was playing for Australia. So, it was sitting behind Dell, and I think the biggest thing, I played a game of reserve grade coming back from my hand, but after that, I was playing all sorts of different positions, which was really, that was another sort of growth and learning thing. So, I think I played about 16 games that year or something, but I think I only started in about 6. I probably had 10 where I was, or I probably started mine on the wing or at fullback in 6, and the rest, when I started a game at the back row. I think I started 2 games at back row. I started 2 games at centre. I played off the bench in front row. I played lock a bit. It was, so I played centre in the semi-final against Parra when we lost, off the bench. And I played front row off the bench against Broncos when we lost. And, those were, I learned how to tackle that year. I remember, it's sort of like sitting there not really knowing what to do, and learning front row and back row. was awesome. I remember they used to get roll Mickey Payer out to prepare me for the game. It was like Mickey was coming off the bench or outside of the squad. They're like, who's a big guy we can run at this little weedy wingo and teach him how to tackle? And you used to have to do repeat efforts on Mickey Payer in the to prepare. And they're like, yep, sweet, you made a few tackles? Yeah, sweet, okay, he can play first grade. Yeah, so another really great learning experience. I remember I got picked on tour with Kiwis that year with like another string to my bow, and I remember selling it to him. Like, I just wanted to go to Europe. I think I said, "Oh, here we go. I know we're playing in France. I said to Kearney, did you see me play off the bench? Like, I can be versatile as well, mate. I can be a great squadman." I think I only played one game, and it was in France. But those sort of things to your game, and I think it's to take it as a compliment that a winger who's not that big will be trusted to play in all different positions, and that was something that Wayne's sort of good at, but I think I've managed to do that a couple of times in my career as well.
We hope you're enjoying Andy Raymond Unfiltered. We're on all leading podcast apps as well as YouTube now. Make sure you subscribe wherever you're listening. That way you won't miss a thing. Before you go, we'd love a rating and review on your current listening app. 5 stars, of course. It helps us grow the brand as we look to expand Unfiltered over the next few months and bring you more. Make sure you come back soon, legends. This episode is brought to you by our wonderful sponsors, Galaxy Finance. Sponsors and personal friends that I trust enough to go to with questions about my own finances. That's not a sales pitch, that's fact. Any questions, any queries, they have the solutions from home loan lending to complete financial planning. With official interest rates at an all-time low, the lenders want your business. With Galaxy Finance, they'll do all the work for you and find the best possible deal. They'll do it all. Get in contact, ask for Leanne, and mention Unfiltered for a free chat. A free chat. No obligations, a free chat just by mentioning Unfiltered. galaxyfinance.com.au is where you can find them. Welcome back to Andy Raymond Unfiltered, the Jason Nightingale story. We continue. That was my next question. Your versatility was tested to the nth degree that season with all those positions. You're still a young bloke. It's actually a huge challenge on an individual level, isn't it? When you're comfortable in a position, you think you've got that position, and then the coach has got other ideas.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's better than what the alternative of the other ideas were, which was a season with the Shell Harbour Sharks. But yeah, so I think that having that faith it probably gave me more confidence in a way that Wayne was picking his best 17 and then fitting them into the 17 rather than picking someone on position or someone that doesn't. I was 92, 93 kilos in the prime, and I reckon I was at 87, 88 that year. So, that was probably what I got from it, was looking quite optimistic in the way I look at things and go, oh, he could have picked, this guy, that guy for that, but instead he found time for me and found a position for me. A guy that played, sort of 30 games of first grade and 25 of those would have been on the wing and 5 at fullback.
Does 2010 rate as the year that stands out above all others?
Yeah, definitely from a club perspective, there's no doubt about that. And then also from a Kiwis perspective, we ended up in the Four Nations that year, and I think I definitely enjoyed that off season more than anyone. I had a great group of friends, and we went and celebrated for a few months with my non-footy friends, and I really felt like a break. I never felt you sort of go into off seasons usually going, you one eye on the next season. That was one where I just let my receding hairline down and really just enjoyed life for a few months. And I think that was pretty good timing. We went away with about 15, 16 of my mates, my girlfriends, and all that sort of thing. And it was all because of, in my mind, I could switch off because of what we were able to achieve at the Dragons, and then at the end of that, getting yourself back up to do it with the Kiwis, pretty special.
What stands out from grand final week?
I love reminiscing on those times. It's easy to do. I've gone over that time. I get asked that question all the time, and it makes all these flashbacks come in my mind. And I think it was our little camp, Casa del Bondo. We had a couple of weeks at the Swiss Grand, the old hotel that's no longer there, and just spending time with our teammates. There was we're a great group of people, and still all speak to all of them at the moment. And we get to hang out with our mates for 2 weeks at a time where should have been some of the most nerve-wracking times of our lives. We're not. We were very confident and enjoying each other's company, and Wayne had us sort of scheduled to a T as far as time that we switch on, time that we switch off. And we felt like, okay, we're turning up here, we're public facing, we're front facing, we're training, and then we turn off and get on the bus and go back to Bondi and hang out with the tourists.
You'd played 26 games that year, you'd scored 16 tries, you'd finish it with a double in that grand final win over the Roosters.
Hornby behind Scott, and here's Boyd into the back. Trouble! Nightingale has scored for the Dragons. Fiend gets it away, Hornby gets it on, bounces for Nightingale, he'll do it, he's done it again.
What stands out from the day? Is it those tries, or does it just become a blur when you look back now?
Well, I think it does become a blur, but it's a blur of snapshots that you think about quite often, and very rarely do they do anything other than bring a smile to the face. So, I remember feeling this wave of energy that just wouldn't leave me. I felt like I could run forever, and I felt like I could run through brick walls, and I'm pretty sure I dropped the ball at the start of the game, and it didn't bother me. Like, it was like, it doesn't matter. I felt like my energy was never going to run out, and it was bizarre, and I feel like everyone else had that sort of euphoric feeling, and then probably getting to the point where that was most of the game, and then the end of the game where we knew we weren't going to be beaten, we had the momentum. Scoring second try, I felt like I think we're only up by maybe 2 points or maybe 6 points, but we weren't going to be stopped. And that's a pretty special feeling once we got past that point where we weren't going to be beaten, to be able to enjoy playing the game you love on the biggest stage, surrounded by teammates that you sacrificed 2 years plus worth of work to be there on that moment and to be able to enjoy the game for what it is was very special. There was no nerves at the end of the game. There was just 17 guys playing footy against another 17 guys that were happy and 17 guys that weren't. And I think the core reason we started playing, to be able to enjoy that on the big stage, and it brought it back to that, which didn't happen too often in my professional career.
That Dragons grand final side, it doesn't often get mentioned as one of the premier sides of the modern era. It's as good as most, and you've got to look long and hard to find a weakness. What stood out about that side and the way that you were all able to play your footy?
Pretty connected, and just knowing their own role.
Yep.
I suppose a lot of people in that team were at the peak of their careers or close to it. So timing was everything. They wouldn't be on paper the best players in the best positions for history, but at the time, that time of, say Michael Wayman, those sort of guys that were just at the absolute pinnacle of their own careers. Myself and Brett were probably before it, and Darius probably just right on it. So we played a couple of years earlier than us. So I think that, getting people at the right time, Gaznia coming back with his, I think Coops, that those guys peaked it. Coops peaked a little bit later in his career, towards his late 20s. So the timing of everything, and the squad of, sort of 30 that went into that, they all were, it met in the melting pot of that 2010 team, no matter what stage of their careers. And I think understanding how to get the most out of themselves, and obviously that goes back to Wayne and all the rest of our staff that got them to that.
Also that year, the distinction of being named in the Rugby League World Side. Do you see that as something special?
Yeah, that was cool. That was exciting. Yeah. And I remember, Nathan Fiend and probably more Nathan Fiend and myself took a little bit longer to get back to off season in 2011, because he just kept waiting for that letter. He just kept saying, "Mate, wonder when this world team start training. When do we start training for this world team?" Anyway, Wayne called us up and said, "Mate, you guys better come back to training. Then the world team's not happening, so you got to come back to reality." And it was pretty special, and especially after a few schooners, doing a couple of white boys doing huckers down the streets of Wollongong, and the world team came out a couple of times then, but not so much outside of that. I think it's a bit of fun and pretty cool accolade, and it was, like I said, too many times you put myself in a world team. We G'd it up a little bit, but mate, pretty special to be recognised among even your country or your club and the global rugby league community.
This episode is brought to you by our wonderful sponsors, Galaxy Finance. Sponsors and personal friends that I trust enough to go to with questions about my own finances. That's not a sales pitch, that's fact. Any questions, any queries, they have the solutions, from home loan lending to complete financial planning. With official interest rates at an all-time low, the lenders want your business. With Galaxy Finance, they'll do all the work for you and find the best possible deal. They'll do it all. Get in contact, ask for Leanne, and mention Unfiltered for a free chat. A free chat. No obligations, a free chat just by mentioning Unfiltered. galaxyfinance.com.au is where you can find them. Mate, you mentioned cool accolades. Recently, you're recognised with a spot on the Walk of Fame at Kogarah Oval. A one-club man, very proud of it. A club junior, that is, for mine, the ultimate personal recognition.
That was really special. I think I mentioned that before, to do it alongside two of my long-serving teammates, and to be recognised among the greats of our club. It's the history of our club is something we've been taught a lot about, and I think you're grateful to be part of that as a Red V member, fan, player, whatever it is, staff, whatever association you have with our club, you understand what that history is, and to be part of the modern history, and along with those two guys, and even more so to share that with my young children, and to see our kids playing together, and you don't have, unless you're Chase Stanley having kids at 18, you don't really have your kids at age while you're playing, and so having them and memories that we have with them, and that they actually have of us playing sport or an association with it really helps. It was very humbling experience to be on that walk with those people, and I suppose we have earned it out of a long career of commitment, but still doesn't feel like it's anywhere near deserved of what some of those people have done in our game.
You mentioned memories. You were fortunate enough to play in a decade's worth of Anzac Day matches. Is it more than just another game? Do you recall them fondly?
Yeah, I do. It is more than just a game. And it's probably another good example of the learnings and lessons and sacrifice of history. And this time it is associated probably unfairly at some point with war, because it's not war what we do, but finding connection between the sacrifices made by soldiers from Australia and New Zealand and around the world. It's easy to play rugby league when you put that in perspective, and I think that's what makes it so fun, is that you can celebrate sacrifice through physicality that we don't get to experience in everyday life. Like I don't get to tackle people very often anymore. It's quite frowned upon in the corporate environment. But being able to sacrifice that with a bit of physicality in sport, it's very special. And yeah, to be part of that day on the annual calendar and playing so many in a row, I used to, especially back in my career, when you start to appreciate it and become the old wise man telling the young guys it's never an easier game of football to get up for, never an easy game of rugby league, and never an occasion you should take for granted.
The transition from footballer to real world, if you want to term it like that, what's your average week? What are you up to, Jace?
Average week. I don't really have an average week. Still help out with the club. I'm still lucky enough to be part of the club. Help out a little bit of coaching, consulting, sort of once a week. And the sponsorship space there, very floating, which is cool.
Yep.
And feel lucky, blessed to be able to do that. Pouring coffees maybe a couple of hours, a couple of times a week. Very much a hindrance in my own cafe these days, but I still love that. It's more of a hobby and a passion. And then I am raising, working for a sports investment fund, Athlon, raising capital. They're investing in global sports assets, so soccer teams in Europe in sort of lower divisions, and building them up and getting returns for investors there.
The business of sport and sport in business, is it a different perspective now that you're retired, that you become aware of the bigger picture and how important off-field is to on-field?
Yeah, it is. It was Elite Athlete Business School, and Beck runs that, and do a little bit of that every now and then, help her out when I can be a nuisance there too. But we've been teaching business and the business of sport for a long time, and before retiring I was more just speculating as to the challenges of it and how important education on sport and growing your networks and treating people nicely and building a personal brand that isn't just social is a bit more whole. And spoke earlier on knowing who you are without the jersey. So all those things go into it, and there will never be a real. Even myself, I prepared pretty well, but it's never going to be a smooth transition. Still working 3 jobs. I suppose the difference is I love them all, and the reason why I work 3 jobs is because I love them all. But yeah, it's a challenge. It's never going to be the same. It's such a crazy world that you live in when you're no matter what professional sport playing. If you're in a team environment, it's when you're not in that team environment, it's different. It's like I used to go on tours with the Kiwis for 6-7 weeks, and you spend day in, day out with the same people, and you're like, you get over about 6 weeks in, you're like, get me away from this guy, and they'll be saying the same thing about me. And then you get home, and you're like, where is everyone? Why am I back to this? So, transitioning from sports, that you get so used to living that way and institutionalized that that's not the real world. So I was lucky enough to have a great bunch of people, great bunch of mentors and these opportunities. But it's a special space to be in, to work in professional sport. And it's definitely a harder transition than anyone could expect. And in saying that, you have to be grateful that you've got it and grateful that you've had it. And lots of those that aren't lucky enough to do that. But the more we can understand about that transition and how it helps and maybe what sort of things to prepare, but also you need to accept it. It's going to be not as good. It's going to be different, and some things will be better than others.
How important is it to remain somewhat part of that team environment? As you said, you're doing a bit of consultant and specialist work with the Dragons backline. How important is that in the makeup of your life at the moment?
I think the connection to the club. I spent, I spent 13 years playing professionally, and 3 or 4 or 5 before that, trying to play professionally. So that connection is it's more than just the sport. It's the people, it's the community, it's the fans, sponsors, and everything. Be part of that. Coaching was never something I had an ambition for, and I suppose it's more just myself just fitting in that box, and what value can I add? What are my core skills that made me allowed me to be the player I wanted to be, and then how do I pass that on? So it was sport, so the coaching side of things, never anything I had an ambition about. They asked me to do it, and it's definitely a love job, and it's pretty cool to be able to see that. And it's something I didn't think I'd be really liking. That I've got to go and coach, I've got to be back in that. But you definitely get back on the roller coaster of wins and losses, which can be good and can be bad, as you know.
An amazing 18 months around the world, an amazing 18 months in rugby league, rule changes, style changes. Do you like what you see and the direction the game's going?
I do. I feel a bit for the players, and then there are obviously some. My mind goes to welfare issues as far as physical and that sort of thing. And the fact that they made all those sacrifices to live in the bubble, it's pretty heavy. It's better than the alternative to play without sport, and I think they get that. Played well to play this game, and certain sacrifices come with it. Those are getting more and more. Look, I do like the rule changes. I wish they had done them before the start of the year. I'm hoping it wasn't a reactive to something that we don't know about that's coming up very soon. But look, ideally you don't do them the week before Magic Round. You give people time to practice, because those that cop the blame are the players. Essentially, they were the ones. Oh, you thug! We did the same thing last week and it was fine, and you've gone and changed the rules on me. 100%. Got to be made to be safer, but at the same time, there's a better way to deliver the way they've delivered that. I think the players were the ones that brought the brunt of it. They're paying more fines now. They're getting suspended more. They're letting their teammates down. They're feeling worse about that for something that was completely out of their control, which is a shame. 100% it's the right thing to do. It's just the timing could have been better, and the way that it could have been educated and passed down could have done a lot better than what they have, because it was crazy. And I think fans and everyone saw how we've been through history so reactive rather than proactive. Proactive would have been doing this before the start of the season. Reactive was doing it when they did.
33 test matches, 266 first grade games and an all-star appearance. So that's 300 games right on the mark. 129 tries over a period of great change in the game. Always the professional, always a pleasure. Jason Nightingale, you, sir, are a legend.
Thanks, Andy. Really appreciate your time, mate. Congrats with what you've done here. I've heard some good things, and absolute pleasure being part of it, mate.
We hope you're enjoying Andy Raymond Unfiltered. We're on all leading podcast apps as well as YouTube now. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you're listening. That way you won't miss a thing. Before you go, we'd love a rating and review on your current listening app. 5 stars, of course. It helps us grow the brand as we look to expand Unfiltered over the next few months and bring you more. Make sure you come back soon, legends.